Hello, everyone, and I hope you're all feeling well and safe. We have reached our second lockdown, and I hope everyone is keeping safe and abiding by the laws and the rules. Today, we are joined, and I'm so happy that you have joined with me on this session. Bullying. It affects a lot of people, and it can happen anywhere: school, traveling, even at the workplace. It can even take place in the home. There are no legal definitions about bullying, but usually it's defined as repeated behaviour which is intended to hurt someone, either emotionally or physically. It's often aimed at certain people because of their race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or any other aspect such as appearance or disability. Bullying can take many forms. There are myths surrounding bullying issues. Some of these can be trivial, and it can undermine a person if they are being bullied. I'd like to go over to two amazing guests of mine today, and I'd like to start with a beautiful, beautiful young lady. Her name is Ambrose, and she's not only a musician, but she also does radio presenting. She's an eccentric, independent artist, and she defies rock and roll music. She's a writer, she's an activist, and we are going to hear from her before I go on. So take it away, Ambrose.
Hiya, I'm Ace. I'm a songwriter from the West Midlands, and I'm going to kick off the show with an original song of mine. And this is a song about knife crime, because that's a very passionate subject. It's something that's really important in the local area. And this is from the perspective of the knife, because people tend to blame the instruments instead of the people holding them. It's called Jack the Knife. Let me introduce you to my friend, Jack the Knife. Struck down many men has Jack the Knife. Taken before the time. Mean and unrelenting, there are no happy endings with Jack the Knife. On the streets, in the night, in the light of a full moon, oh, the fun will be ending all too soon. They blame drugs and alcohol, but he was only 12 years old when he first met Jack the Knife and let him loose. Watch out, here I come, you better run. So much darkness in a soul so young. Had a future, such a waste of life. I bet he wished he'd never met Jack the Knife. In the park, I recall, it was a perfect sunny day when the kids met Jack the Knife, and he led them all astray. Oh, they felt like blood brothers till they turned on each other. Oh, the cries of their mothers as their bodies were taken away. They felt cool like the sharks and the jets, but everyone soon forgets that when the cameras stop, everybody gets back up, and movies are not real I'd never met Jack the Knife. Let me introduce you to my friend Jack the Knife. Struck down many men has Jack the Knife. Taken before their time, mean and unrelenting, there are no happy endings. Let me introduce you to my friend Jack the Knife. Struck down many men has Jack the Knife. Taken before their time, mean and unrelenting, there are no happy endings with Jack the Knife. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Okay, so before I come back to Ace, if I can go to my second beautiful guest, and her name is Taylor-Louise Thomas. She is also a very talented singer-songwriter and voice and performance coach, but she's also known as Miss Leamington 2020. So if I can introduce Taylor-Louise Thomas and to say welcome to my show on VodTalk.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and get chatting about some things with you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. But we do have a surprise lined up for our viewers as well towards the end of our show, something that, Taylor will be giving us one of her numbers. If I can get back to Ace. Wow, that was amazing, Ace.
Thank you.
I mean, I think Taylor will agree that,
yes.
I
love that song a lot.
Thank you, man.
Yes. So basically, why do you girls, I mean, use music? Why do you write songs? Why do you, sing? What is it? So Ace, if I can put that to you first,
It's kind of like a compulsion. I mean, when you think about it, like aside to having it as a career and a talent and everything, when music's part of, your being, like when you're a musician, when you're a creative person, it kind of just becomes a thing that's part of you. It's like an extra limb, like, my guitar, my instruments, like it's something that you have to do, whether you're doing it as a career or not. Like whatever mental or physical state you're in, music is always the thing that you can rely on. It's something that I loved growing up. I grew up in a very musical family. My grandparents were, my mum's side, were very into classical music, and so they brought me up like on music lessons, trying to like learn violin, piano, all of that. And so while it was, a part of that, I became so much part of my life that it's always just been a constant thing. It's the constant, it's been the one thing I can rely on beyond anything else.
Well, we'll come back to more of that in detail, but if I can go over to Taylor. Taylor, right. I would like you, it's very, very noble of you to come here today to share with us and our viewers your experiences of tremendous things that you have gone through. So what I would like to ask is if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things that you have had to go through, just to start with, and then we'll go on to the other aspects of it. So if you could just tell our viewers, what it is that you actually do, all the variety of things, and some of the, drastic things that you've had to encounter along the way.
Yeah, okay, sure. So firstly, I completely agree with everything Ace said. when it comes to music, I've never met a musician where you don't instantly click and you just understand each other. It really is something that's just in your blood, and you just can't explain it. It's a part of you, and it's always going to be there. So for me, I had a little bit of a different journey getting into music than Ace did. I don't have anybody in my family that's musical, but I was born and raised in Germany. I was very different there because I wasn't born on the barracks or in the army camp like a lot of the children were that were from England. And I was actually born in Germany, but I was British. So that was already an odd one. So I was somebody a little bit different in Germany. And then I came to the UK when I was around 7 or 8 years old. And again, I didn't know anybody here, so I was a little bit different. So I faced quite a lot of struggles and a lot of bullying and sort of being outcast. So for me, writing was a coping mechanism, and music was just, it was there. As Ace said, music's always there for you. So that's my experience of that.
Yeah, yeah. So, Ace, you've had few journeys in your life where I know both you ladies have some similarities. You're in your tender age of 22, 23 years of age, and from the age of 7, as young as that, both you girls have experienced, things that, you just couldn't sort of like put a finger on, why it would happen. And being in the surrounding area that you were, probably added up to some extent of why it was happening. But if I can ask Ace maybe first, you faced bullying. You, at some point, from my conversations with you, as I was trying to get to know you a little bit as well, you, in a good way, you felt that, am I the bully as well? Because I've had to deal with it in a certain way to stop being bullied. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so before I moved over to where I am now in Kenilworth, I lived in London, and so it was kind of a rougher environment in the sense that, over there we were more of kind of not aggressive. I want to say aggressive, but we're more of like you have to have a kind of a tough exterior in that environment. And so if someone reacts to you, you react back in a physical way like this. You kind of like par each other, there was more physical violence at my first school, but there wasn't intense bullying. There wasn't any really racial bullying there because it was a very mixed crowd. And so when I moved to Kenilworth, that was a massive sort of change and a challenge, because I was essentially the only mixed race person in my year. There was like 2 others, and they were in the popular group. They'd grown up with the others, and so the bullying was almost instantaneous. And at first it was verbal, but when it eventually did get physical, because I'd had that kind of sort of rough playhousing rough back in London, I reacted physically as well, and they didn't expect that. And so towards the bullies, I would physically react, and I would get into fights, and I would get in trouble. And the teachers obviously weren't used to girls as well acting physically towards the bullying. And so I would get in trouble for reacting physically. And I think one thing I found with bullying is that people always notice how you react instead of how you were provoked. And so I started to notice a dangerous pattern where I would be stooping to their level, I would be getting in a bad headspace, and then I would become a bully. Essentially, I'd become like them because I was lashing out a lot. And I wanted to nip that in the bud as soon as it was pointed out to me, really, that I wasn't just reacting in a bad way. I was becoming like the people that were inflicting that pain on me.
Yeah. Taylor, what about yourself? What do you feel? If you can tell us a little bit about what's happened to you from the tender age of 7 to 8, which, during our conversations that you mentioned. What do you think? I mean, when you tell us what's happened, were the causes of, the things that was happening to you? Yeah.
So very similar to Ace, actually. I think that when I moved to the Warwick Leamington area at such a young age, I think that I was probably one of very few mixed race children that were either in my class at school. So primary school, I think I got here and I went into year 4, I think it is here, or year 5. And I was just a little bit different. Everyone was curious about me because I was very new and I was new to England and stuff. So I was already I made myself a target by being new. But then I got to secondary school, and obviously you're mixing with a lot of different children from a lot of different schools, but it's the same thing. I was one of very few that had curly hair, that was mixed race, and that had the upbringing that I did. And so you're already an instantaneous target. I absolutely love what A said with that. So it's a pretty tough one, but yeah, I think.
Could you tell us?
It comes from people not really understanding you or knowing much about you, or you're different. They've never had that in their lives. They've never been brought up around it. They don't know what you are. You could be a threat. That's my thoughts on it anyway. And
what were the things that were being done to you or said to you? What kind of things happened verbally, physically? If you could kindly share whatever you can.
So there was physical, but it was very minor. I would definitely say that the mental and the verbal abuse took more of a toll, and I would have comments about my nose, saying that I should have a nose job to get a white nose, or that I should bleach my skin because I would look better white, or that my hair was too frizzy and that I would never get a boyfriend, and blah 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 blah. It went on, and I think at that age, even though I sort of recognized, I was a lot more mature for my age, I recognized that this wasn't a me issue. It wasn't something within me. But when it goes on for so long, you start being convinced that, maybe I should try and fit in. So you start straightening your hair. I wanted to be white so bad. There was loads of different things. So it has an effect, even if you are a really, really strong person. But no, I sort of started realizing that I was strong anyway as a strong person, but I did start growing more of a backbone, more of a sort of defense mechanism, to the point where it's affected me in my day-to-day even now, in terms of that some people have said you're too strong, or you're too blunt, or you're too forwards, and it's just almost like you've kind of have to become that rock or that stone, so you just don't put up with anything anymore. Yeah.
Okay. And what about Ace? I mean, you've had, you did your, you had your reactions, you did your confrontations. You weren't going to take no nonsense, basically, which in turn, put you in some sort of trouble, maybe, or made others look differently, whether they were the school staff, other adults around you. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it actually started exactly like what Taylor said. I wanted to be white so bad. Like, I started off being completely fine with myself. I was the eccentric, weird kid, very creative in that. And then when I get there, and then like it's an all white environment, and then suddenly I was hit from all directions saying, your nose is weird, your skin color is weird, everything, And so when you start to have that initial self-hatred spawn out of nowhere, it kind of creates a toxic environment for yourself and others, because you project. And I kind of fluctuated with my.
Could you share with our viewers what is your actual background, as in what race, or where are your actually original and ethnic background is?
So I'm Indo-Semitic. So my dad's Indian, my mum's Jewish. And so that was very, like, to use the word, it was foreign to people. People kind of they fear what they don't know. You know, humans have like a natural fear of the unknown, and so anything different, anyone different in any kind of way, they instantly like they pick on that, because like they want to understand it, but like they make fun of something they can't understand because it makes them uncomfortable. And so I went from being this quiet, you know, kid who was very reserved because I'd left my comfort environment into this really strange, uncomfortable environment. And then the minute they lashed out, I hit them with the same energy and then 10 times more, because I was very into self-defense and everything. And I was like, you know, you're not going to treat me like that. But then obviously the teachers, they were like, right, you're trouble. And then when because I'm chronically ill as well, and I've had chronic illness throughout my whole life, so I used to miss a lot of school, and the teachers would also latch on to that, call me a hypochondriac, make it out like I was making it up so that I would be able to avoid school, and like because a lot of the teachers could be bullies as well inside with those kids, because they only saw my reaction instead of what provoked it. It led to me thinking there was something wrong with my personality, that I thought that I was, you know, essentially a bully. And I like to make, you know, the assurance to people that self-defense doesn't make you an abuser, it doesn't make you a bully. That standing up for yourself is the right thing to do, but there are healthy ways to go about it. And at the time when I first started out, I didn't know what those healthy ways were, because there was no one to show me.
How old were you at that time?
When I started lashing out, I was about 9 or 10, because it was only really verbal bullying in the first like year or so. And when I made a sort of friendship group with the other like weird nerds, you know, once they started getting targeted, it was because of me. Like they weren't really so-called, like they were kind of left alone before I joined that friendship group, and they took me in and sort of were like, you know, we've got you. But then they started getting targeted because of me, and then that's what kind of triggered me to lash out. I ended up getting this sort of protective complex over them, and spawned some real anger issues out of all of that.
Taylor, I mean, I think you can relate similarly to what Ace is saying. You know, although Ace was a little bit more like, well, I'm not going to take no nonsense, you know, and that's the way she felt was, you know, the best way for her. How did you go about, you know, things that were happening to you?
Yeah, so I'm actually quite intrigued by how similar me and Ace are. We've known each other for ages, but I don't think we've really talked this in depth about it before. So I've obviously had a very different upbringing. I'm an only child as well, and my dad being away on tour in the military meant that me and my mom kind of spent most of the time together. So I never really had that sort of get up and fight about me. Yes, I was confident. Yes, I could sort of fake it till I make it, but I would go home and I would kind of be a little bit of a mess. So for me, I didn't cope with it as well as I wanted to appear like I was. So what I would say to everybody else, if anyone was going through anything, is, you know, you're perfect the way you are, don't change, it's them, it's not you. But I would never take that advice myself. So unfortunately, it did turn to self-harming, and I sort of convinced myself that I wasn't doing it because it was never as bad as somebody else. But it's taken me the past, well, possibly 10 years to accept that no, any form of injury was self-harming. And that was my coping mechanism, along with writing, just because I was so confused, because I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with me. But where I was, I felt like there was pressure to be like everybody else that was around me. And again, I was so different, and I didn't want to be like anybody else. But I felt like that was a bad thing.
Yeah, may I ask you, at what age did you feel that you had to self-harm yourself? And what was it that triggered you in the first instance, you know, when the very first time you thought, okay, you know, maybe if I get rid of myself, everything will be okay. You know, what age were you? And what is it that you think?
Sorry, yes. I only think that I had that moment of, I'm not sure I want to be here twice in my life. I possibly had that twice or 3 times. But whenever I succumbed to any injury or self-harm, it was more of a case of, I must be causing these people pain and distress for them to have to lash out at me. So I need to take that out on myself. It wasn't a case of being, you know, oh my goodness, I'm really, really sad and this is the only thing that I can do about it. I was at such a loss, and I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to go to. Similarly to Ace, the teachers were not supportive at all. My parents were involved with the school. I ended up moving schools. I was at such a loss. I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. And I think as a child at the time, feeling like school was the be all and end all of life, if I didn't do well, I didn't know how to cope. And writing music was the only thing that was really there as a constant. And the way that I could express, and I could talk to my guitar, which sounds silly, but I could talk to the notepad. I could use the pen to express everything without judgment. And that was really my two coping mechanisms, really.
Yeah. Well, Ace, do you have any thoughts and comments on that? Anything,
We're so similar, man. Like Taylor was saying, like, because we went to college together, but we never really like we like, because music is a second language. It's how people connect, and so that's. But honestly, I completely agree. Like, I always took music lessons, but before I decided to do music as a career, I wanted to be an author. Like writing stories was my form of escapism, because I developed like chronic depression from when we moved here because of the bullying and the confusion and the feeling so isolated. And so my writing was my form of escapism and like creating these worlds that I could write myself into, essentially. But then I think finding music was a godsend, because then I realized that I could make the soundtrack to those stories, and then I could help other people experience it with me and relate to that. And I'm really blessed for like the music community as well, because I found, like, especially with Tay, like everyone sort of had very similar experiences, because music is the gateway to getting help for your creatives. It's a good channel for like any mental sort of blockage or anything. It's like one of those things that even when you're not a musical person, people sing, they dance, it's freedom of expression. It allows you to get rid of all of the emotions that have been pent up. And I'm really grateful for the music community, and Taylor especially.
Okay, how do you recognize these bullying behaviors that could come towards you, for example, and whether it's towards you or somebody else? I mean, I can just picture, if someone was being bullied, Ace is coming for that bully.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just briefly from what I'm just hearing, and it's just amazing. There needs to be more people who can say, okay, well, we can recognize from afar what's happening there. Do we intervene? Is it safe for us to intervene? What do we do? So maybe Taylor, I don't know if you can say something about how would you recognize a bullying behavior coming towards you or someone else?
So I actually feel like we always recognize it. I think that it's always been there as a child. And then a teenager when I was going through stuff. I don't think that there's ever an inability to recognize it. I think it's a conscious choice of whether people are recognizing it or not. And then as a child, obviously you've spent so long listening to your carers, your parents, that what they say is what goes. And so you don't necessarily know what the right or wrong thing to do is as a child. Obviously, as you get older, you've got that freedom of speech a little bit more. You're a little bit more independent, and you're not so dependent on what other people are doing or saying. And especially when you get out of school, you don't have any teachers to answer to and stuff. So you find your own way of coping or dealing or approaching the situation. But I do think that we recognize it as children. It's just a case of, well, is it going to get me into trouble? Am I going to cause a scene? Is it going to make something else problematic in my life or my time while I'm at school? So I think it's a choice. And then for people that sort of stand by it as well, it's a choice of whether they're getting involved or not. And then if they don't and they decide to ignore it and turn a blind eye, I think can continue and follow into adult life, really. So it's a conscious choice of whether you want to recognize it or not.
Yeah. Ace, did you ever feel the need to self-harm because of the way you were being made to feel? And I want to come back to Taylor afterwards, as in, at what point did you stop your self-harm?
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you realize that, hold on a minute, it's not me, it's them?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Ace, I mean, have you ever had any thoughts like, the need to self-harm because of the way you were being made to feel?
Kind of, yeah. I did it in a different way, sort of, like, because like, a lot of people think that self-harm is like, physically, like doing stuff like cutting and stuff like that, but there's other forms. Like I said, I was chronically ill and I always suffered with my weight, so because that was another thing that people would bully me for. Like, I didn't have an eating disorder as such, because I didn't want to, I didn't want to be thin. I had body dysmorphia because I saw myself as thinner than I was. But if I was ever in a really bad headspace and or people would be making me feel a certain emotion, I would intentionally make myself sick because I knew how to. I was like, because I get sick so easily, it would literally take me, doing a certain amount of exercise and burning myself out if I didn't meet the calorie count. And so when it would get too much at school, I would, sometimes I would intentionally not eat. I would make myself ill just to the point where I wouldn't have to go to school, so I could avoid that. And then I'd be at home and then I'd be eating normally and I'd be fine again. But it was avoidance tactics more than anything else. And I did think of, I did consider, physical self-harm, but I don't know. I think from my perspective is sometimes when you can't express the emotions that you're feeling, like the physical self-harm is a way for other people to see it. In a way, it's a way to channel that pain and make it tangible, because you can't explain sort of the inner feelings that you're feeling. You can't explain that to people that don't resonate or understand. It's like with depression, anxiety, people don't see those as like physical illnesses, even though they are, because it's in your brain. And so a lot of the time when you inflict like physical harm on yourself, it's a way for other people to see what you're experiencing. But again, because they don't understand that, you can't verbalize that, they judge that as well, and it makes it worse. So I'd say communication is more than anything the way out of that. But I didn't know how to communicate to people, and that's the problem with children. Little children, they don't know how to communicate those emotions, especially if we're not having those talks in school and from parents who don't understand it either. So I think education on the topic is incredibly important for that.
And then there's the other thing of how seriously are children taken as well. Are they just making a fuss over nothing? Are they being taken seriously? So Taylor, coming back to you, at what point did you think and say to yourself, why am I doing this self-harm? And at what point did you put a stop to it?
Yeah, so my journey with that thought process probably started off when I was about 12 or 13 years old, was when I first started thinking those things, feeling those things. And it's a tough one because I'm quite lucky. I did have that parental support. I'm very close to my mom. I could tell her anything. We spoke about everything back all the way. So I'm always curious about my case as to why I had those thoughts still, why I still felt the need to do that. And similar to Ace, it wasn't always the standard that everybody thinks. I would do some bizarre stuff, which I don't think I've ever really spoken about, but I would maybe make blood blisters or chicken scratches or just different things. Yes, sometimes the standard, but I never wanted anybody to sort of see that, but it was almost like a cry for help. So it was a weird one. And then unfortunately, it's something that sticks with me for life, but I stopped. The last time that it ever happened was possibly 3 years ago, but I was in a really mentally abusive relationship, which I wasn't even aware of. And I was very confused. And luckily I got out of that. But another one of my things was the relationship with food. And I just didn't eat. And that was one of my self-harming.
Yeah, that was another added pressure kind of on there. Yeah. So
unfortunately, sorry, I think there's a lag.
Go on.
Unfortunately, with my grandparents, they weren't quite the nicest grandparents that I've come across, and I would have comments about my weight or my body. So that was something at the same time as the bullies going on at 12, 13, where I didn't want to eat anything, and I was obsessed with not eating. again, that was a form of self-harm, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Ace, why do you think these bullies do what they do?
I think it's entirely situational, because like from taking myself as an example, when I started lashing out, you know, the reason I lashed out was because people were inflicting pain on me. And so a lot of the time, you know, bullying can be because they've experienced bullying from maybe parents or teachers, you know, maybe they have a bad home environment. And so, you know, when you grow up like seeing those behaviors, you mimic them, it becomes part of your personality. It's something that you can, you know, not realize that you're doing, essentially, because, you know, it's something that you've seen, it's something that you've experienced, and so it's just become a part of the way you act and treat people. Sometimes I reckon, you know, it's a self-defense mechanism. Sometimes like because that's, we're just talking about like kids, but I mean bullying happens to adults as well, like in the workplace, in the home, whatever it is. And I feel like it can happen when you grow up exhibiting those behaviors and people don't call you out. You know, if you are a bully when you're a kid and people, you know, no one stands up to you and no one calls you out for those behaviors, and you're allowed to continue exhibiting those behaviors and treating people that way up into adulthood, that's when you get people in these like high profile positions that become bosses and CEOs, and they treat their employees like crap. And then, like, you know, because not all bosses are like that, but it is a power trip, and bullies get you know, they have this feeling of power over people. And once you get greedy with that emotion and you like the feeling of that, then it can it can switch. That's when it switches from bullying to abuse. So there is a clear distinction, but I feel like, you know, it is deprogrammable, but it's difficult to call people out on those behaviors. And then if you are a bully and realize you're being like that, you also have to deprogram yourself from those learned behaviors.
Well, both of you have experienced the bullying at various different stages from your childhood to, you know, secondary school to college levels. And I mean, what is it like now? I mean, you know, can you say that you know what to look out for and you can put a stop to it? Or, you know, is it something that, you know, I suppose you can't anticipate if you were to go to a workplace, you don't really know until you're in it, you know, what's going to happen. But the stage you are in now, both of you are 22, 23, right? Now, primary school level, secondary, and then, you know, college years, you've encountered different types of bullying. How do you feel that, you know, you are now, and, you know, how would you do things differently or approach things differently? I'll start with Taylor.
I wouldn't do anything differently at all. I wouldn't change one aspect of my life. I really wouldn't. If I never went through half of that, I know it's that cliche thing of I wouldn't be who I am today, but I know a lot. I'm aware of a lot. I know myself even more. And there's a lot of things that potentially I would come across this sort of stuff in my adult life and I wouldn't know how to deal with it. And maybe I'd feel the pressure a lot more. I don't think that I would change anything really. And in terms of being able to spot bullies now or see anything with adult sort of situation, I think that I still don't just assume. I never assume that somebody's gonna treat me badly. I never assume that someone's gonna treat me well either. I just go with a blank canvas, and I am still shocked when I do come across comments from adults and things. But again, I think that's conditioning from childhood, how you grew up, who you grew up with. So I can't always blame the person or the child. When I was a child, I can't blame the children, and I didn't. It was that, it's just that when you get older and you become an adult, it's having that conscious effort to decide to relearn and re-educate yourself and understand something a little bit different.
What's concerning me here, and I think some of our viewers would probably you know, have at the back of their mind, is the schools where both of you girls went. You know, I'm just not sure whether it's maybe because of the area and the, you know, the community that you've been around. The support was not there from the schools. The support was not there, even though your parents actually did show concern. It was sort of like brushed under the rug, kind of. Ace, why do you think that happened?
I don't know whether it's kind of the teachers had similar reactions to the kids there, because the area where we live was incredibly reserved, conservative, very different to London, obviously, where we were before. And I feel like the teachers had a similar reaction to the kids, again, because obviously they didn't see the initial provocation of the situations, but they have biases just like everyone else. You know, when you have like a sort of a town, a place where all of these behaviors, the negative behaviors, are encouraged, where they're shared by adults and then passed on to the kids, you do see that ending up in the learning environments as well. And so that's honestly, it's just, I think it's down to a pre-existing bias that they maybe didn't realize they had. And you know, a lot of schools, most schools have that whole, you know, zero tolerance policy for bullying, but it feels very subjective because, you know, I don't think they realize that they have those biases, because again, they haven't been told that they're doing something wrong. And if a kid tries to tell a teacher, you know, you're making me feel some type of way, you know, people don't like being told bad things about themselves, and so they can act quite negatively about that. And it's usually not until parents get involved that that something happens, but then even then sometimes that can make it worse. It results in having to move schools, and so I think you're generally it's up to the person being bullied. It shouldn't have to be, but it does come down to how they learn to react towards the people bullying them, whether it's the kids or the adults. And as we spoke about, what my tactics ended up being, that I went from being very angry and lashing out to analyzing the people that were bullying me. I started thinking from a writer's perspective and like turning them into characters and trying to like look at their backstory, understand who they were as people, what they went through, and their situation. Once I could understand maybe why they were acting the way they were acting, I realized the only way to react that would get a positive reaction back is to show them like so much love and kindness that they couldn't keep bullying, because there was either they would look like the bad guy to everyone else, being, you know, horrible to this really nice kid, or they would suddenly realize that, you know, the person that they're inflicting pain on is offering them a chance to, you know, come to them for help and say, you know, I am actually going through a bad situation. I'm sorry that I've put you through something that I'm going through, and allowing them to come to you for help as well. That's one way I found help de-escalate a lot of my issues with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it sounds like a really good positive method as well, and we hope that, you know, from that, you know, they'll probably take a step back and think like, hold on a minute, you know, I'm not getting the reaction I wanted to get, you know, and it might give them a question mark, like, you know, am I doing the right thing? Taylor, tell us something about being Miss Leamington.
Oh gosh, I wasn't even thinking about that. Oh gosh. I kind of fell into Miss England. That really was a weird one. Amazingly, actually, it started with this topic that we're talking about. I was invited to represent Millennium Balties, which you had on your show, and they were doing a mission awareness anti-bullying campaign at the time. I think this was last April, and they invited me along to sing a song. They knew a little bit of my story, a little bit of what we've spoken about today, and there was going to be some children there and things. And they wanted me to give a little bit of a speech, a little bit of a talk, and sing some of my songs. So I did that, and from there, some people that were involved with Miss England were there, and they took my email. I applied. I hadn't heard anything for a really long time. Months went by, and then they got in touch and said, we want you to be involved. We'll put your photo up in 3 days. Are you happy to be involved? So I didn't know what I was getting involved with, but I just thought, yes, sure. Now, this is probably the part where I come in as a bit of a bully in my own mind in adult life. I thought that pageants were all about how you look, how you dress, how skinny you are, just wanting world peace and nothing else. I had no idea that it was such an inspirational role to have, or that it was about anything that you're passionate about. And that led me to then becoming Miss Leamington Spa this year, which,
Brilliant.
amazing.
Yeah, well, it is. And what I want to say is, you mentioned about mission awareness, about doing these campaigns about anti-bullying. How did you find all of that? Did you find people were actually getting together and trying to make a difference?
Definitely. So I think that people, they want to be able to help. They want to be able to do things, but the struggle is for people is making that effort. So if we can find a way to make things easier and simpler for people to be able to get involved or to help out, and other things helping the environment and reducing plastic pollution and things like that with the mission awarenesses. And I love all of that stuff. And for people, it's not that they don't want to get involved, it's they don't know how. So when they attend these things and they learn a little bit more and they go away with a little bit more knowledge, it just makes it a little bit easier for them, and they can also make a bit of a difference too. So yeah, I definitely think people want to get involved. It's just it's giving them the platform to do so.
On that note, I'd like you, if I can request, if you, we know you're a songwriter and a singer.
Yes,
if you could put one of your number for us and our viewers, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And give us something to enjoy a little bit, and then.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep it quite topical. So just to sort of lighten the mood but keep it in relation still, this song is one of mine, and it's called Nothing to Prove. And this is about kind of saying, own yourself, you be you, and you don't have to really answer to anybody, and as long as you're happy. So I hope you like it.
Brilliant.
I wanna be important. I wanna mean something to you. I gotta feel the love, and I gotta hear you feel it too. I know I got nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. I found a way, I'll be okay. But for today, I got nothing to prove. Put your arms around me. Tell me you waited for it to stay. Tell me that you found me, and that it's never gonna change. I know I got nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. I'll be okay. I found a way. But for today, I got nothing to prove. Never gonna stop, never gonna change. Always be the same. Would you let me stay? Never gonna stop, never gonna change. Always be the same. Would you let me stay? Never gonna stop, never gonna change. Always be the same. With nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. I'll be okay. much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was amazing. That was amazing. We are coming almost near to the end of our show. Is there anything else that you could add on, Ace and Taylor, that you'd like to say? I know there are many forms of bullies, you know, whether it's verbal. There's one that we didn't really touch upon, which is the cyber bullying. You know, did any of you girls, encounter any of that yourself? If you, yeah. Can you tell me, Ace, maybe, tell me, briefly something, about that.
Yeah. So weirdly, I didn't start getting cyberbullied until, I actually started a anti-cyberbullying campaign because one of my friends was getting horrifically like the worst it could possibly be in around year 9, and it was really vicious. And so I started this campaign sort of to help them, and as a result, obviously I got backlash from that, because they were like, oh, that's so cringe that you're starting this, and they kind of directed their anger towards me. And it was weird because obviously once people found out about, the music that I was trying to make, it would always be making fun of that. So they would go out of their way to, they would share my videos, or like my like anything I did online to do with music or writing, they would share them with their friends in group chats. They would say really nasty things about me in group chats and then accidentally add me to those group chats so that I would see it. And while like looking back now, I'm like, they were sharing all my music, they were getting those views up, so thanks. But like at the time I was like,
crazy.
I was super embarrassed, because I thought, like if I was really talented, if I was good at this, then they would see those videos and they would think they were cool. Why are they making fun of them? And I deleted a whole channel. I was in a YouTube channel with a few friends, and we were getting quite, big. We were getting some notoriety. And then when I tried to hide that from people at school, and then when some people found it, and it started, getting kind of bad when people would make fun of that just because we were passionate about something, I took the channel down. I took all the videos down. Because they were getting the backlash, like my friends that were on the channel would get backlash because of me. And so I had this horrible guilt, that I was inflicting pain on them, like it was like a secondhand bullying kind of thing. And it was my fault that they were feeling the way that I do. But like in a way, once I got to year 10 and 11, the anti-bullying campaign actually picked up quite a bit, and it helped me the same way that I was trying to help others, and then it became an actual thing. And so in the long run it was worth it. But people can be really, really vicious online. I tried to, I'm lucky my parents kept me off of like social media until I was a little bit older. I joined kind of a lot later than everyone else, but when I did join, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I didn't quite realize what I was being exposed to. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's why they were trying to protect me. That's what they were keeping me from.
It's nasty, isn't it? Taylor, anything along similar lines you have encountered with cyberbullying?
Yeah, so I did experience that at the first secondary school that I was at, and I think it was another tactic for the children that I was around. I think it's very easy for people to hide behind a screen. So again, I couldn't blame them, because it was just easy, and it was easy for other people to join in. But for me, it would get to the extent where they would delete things that they'd said or done so that it seemed like I was a little bit crazy. But the same thing, my music was attacked. I probably got into playing guitar and singing and writing a year or two before it really all kicked off. And that was attacked. So that was a bit of a struggle to then use that as my coping mechanism. But I think that it's really important for anybody that does experience, even to or a comment in the workplace about anything, that you just stick to everything that you were wanting to do, and that you find a way to turn it into a positive. I guess like Ace with her writing and wanting to write or do something within the arts before knowing she wanted to take it in a music career, and me with now I want to inspire people through the songs and through the music that might experience anything that I ever go through, just so that nobody ever feels alone. Because I think the biggest threat is the loneliness that comes from it, or the isolation feeling and being excluded. So it's very important that anything that happens, people turn it into a positive, and to understand and remember that you're definitely not alone.
Brilliant. Yes, definitely. What would you girls give as an advice to young people, around the ages of when you were first experiencing bullying, to the teenage stage that you experienced up until now? What kinds of tips and advice would you give them to look out for or do in the sense of where to reach for support? Ace, if you can tell us a bit.
Okay, so I'd say part one, in terms of things you can do for yourself, I would say adopt the motto of do no harm but take no crap. Set out to be as good of a person as you can be, but build strength of mind, strength of character, and strength of body. Learn self-defense, because don't pick fights, but learn to defend yourself. And there's classes you can take in order to do that in case things get physical. In terms of mentally, there's mindfulness courses you can take. Make sure that you look for things like therapy, online therapy. Make sure you communicate with the people in your life, have a support network. And in terms of building strength of character, self-awareness is really important, to learn how to recognize toxic behaviors that people may be inflicting on you, or that you may be mimicking and inflicting on others. And there's a lot of really good support for bullying in online as well that you can go to, because obviously right now we're in lockdown, and so things like physical therapy that you can go to in person is practically impossible right now. So I'd say that online there's a lot of bullying advice. Young Minds are really, really good. The Anti-Bullying Alliance as well. And make sure that you're just very vocal about what is happening to you and what you're feeling, because communicating those emotions, it's therapeutic, but it also helps others understand. And whatever you're passionate about, don't let anybody, even if they do make you feel bad for having that passion, don't let them stop you from pursuing it, because there's a lot of things that I did stop doing that I don't do now, and that's my biggest regret, that I let them get to me that much, that I just stopped doing what I love. And in the long run, when you grow up, when you get older, those things that you love are still going to be there, and those bullies won't be. So stick with the thing that you're passionate about, what you're good at, what you love, and you'll be able to use that as a crutch for whenever you're going through anything in life. For me, that's music. I know it's the same for Taylor, but whatever it is, just stick at it and love yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Taylor, what can you add to that? Or
I think that A covered everything.
You did, didn't you?
No, that was fantastic. But I'm very, very similar. I never even thought about that. I was training to compete from a young age in Germany. I was training and I was racing gala swimming and competing for my county when I came here, and I gave it up because people didn't understand my hair and things. But I got into spiritual healing about 3 years ago, and I have never, ever looked back or regret it. So that would be my first advice, is to just have a look at that. It's really hard for people that are young, or it would have been for me, to approach any sort of company or organization. So if that's not a possibility, you just have to remember that if you feel uncomfortable in a situation or somewhere, it really isn't you. They're not your people. That was the one thing I wish that I could tell myself back then, was these aren't your people, and that's why they don't get you, and that's why you don't feel comfortable, because you're not supposed to be fitting in here. And that wasn't apparent until I went to my secondary school, and nobody saw my skin color. Everybody wanted me to have my curly hair, and I was very confused. So honestly, Ace has covered all of the practical stuff, but if nothing else, spiritualism and going within and just knowing yourself and your gut feelings is going to be what will help you out the most.
Brilliant. Well, parents out there of Taylor and Ace, you've got two amazing girls. You should be proud of them, because I know I feel very proud. I've got a daughter who's the same age as yourself, and it's amazing the amount of awareness you have around you. And, you know, we do hope that our VodTalk viewers do take on board, you know, what you have just mentioned. And, you know, you've just been amazing. I mean, I think, you know, from the age of 7 to 8, for what you've gone through, you know, you ladies are stronger and, you know, amazing human beings, you know. So, you know, take it as, you know, no one can touch you, because, you know, you did the right thing. And as Taylor mentioned, you know, you will not change anything if you were to, you know, think back, because you were just being yourself, you know, and why should anyone come and intervene to change you? And do you know what the biggest strength for you girls were? You know, you had your family support, and the faith that, you know, you've got your mechanisms of coping where your songs come in, you know. But I think because you had that foundation in the home, you know, you had that strong support, and, you know, that helped you along the way. But I want to add on to what Ace mentioned about young minds. I do have a couple of confidential helplines which our viewers could take note of. It's the number is 0808 800 2222. It's young people's line where, you know, it's all confidential. There is another number which is free as well, which is 0800 1111. And so these numbers are there for the young people who feel that they can't approach, you know, anyone else, you know, whether it's family member or a friend, and they just want to confidentially speak to someone. So that's the only thing I could add on to what you girls were saying. But I think, you know, you girls have given some very, very valuable tips, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I do hope someone's out there who will see that, you know, these young girls have inspired us, and, you know, you've made a difference in someone's life. But again, I want to say
thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
I want to thank you for coming on, and I do hope to see you girls again soon on our VodTalk platform. But anything else, last few things you would like to say before you go?
Just thank you for having us and letting us share our story. I think that the more people that talk about their own stories, it's very hard to talk about yourself because it feels very self-centered, but someone is going to relate to some part of your story. And thank you for giving us that opportunity to do that, really.
Yeah, exactly what Taylor said. Thank you for having us, letting us share our stories, and hopefully help someone else in the process.
Well, you're amazing. So this is to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. All right. So, viewers, we've had some amazing girls on today. The only thing I have left to say is, how do we help someone from the young age of that primary school? Education, not only at the schools and education sectors, it needs to start at home. Your children need to be able to approach you, talk to them about making positive choices and rising above what their peers expect of them and being responsible. If someone is being bullied, from a verbal calling name to as much as sexually being oppressed, from young age of 7, 8 up until the young adulthood, encourage them to seek help from someone they trust, either a parent, a family member, or a teacher. They can keep a diary of all incidents as evidence, take screenshots of bullying if it's online. This form of bullying is very serious. it can cause a person not only emotional but mental stress that can lead all the way up to adulthood. How to deal with it? You've got your home, the family, and you've got those counselling external bodies. It's up to how that victim or the person that's being bullied feels. On that note, I'd like you to be safe and take note that bullying doesn't have to be there, and you don't have to take it. You need to know how to say no and feel that you've got that defense and you find your own coping mechanism, just like our two girls have. Be safe and be sure to join VodTalk, which is our new platform, and share this, like us, comment us, and see you again once again soon. Stay blessed.